It's at the end because nope, it's at the beginning. Cool, 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 cool.
Felipe, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So let's take a look back at your career to start here, because a lot of people are engaged with your music just for the sake of it being really amazing music. You've been recognized by industry leaders, by the hip hop community as just an incredibly prolific and important self-made artist. But also you have chosen to use your music as a vehicle for politics. And I think that if you didn't do that, you would still be recognized as a very important artist, but you chose to do that. And I think that your music has had an incredibly profound impact on people politically. So I think just looking back at all of your work, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about your music serving as a politically transformative event in someone's life for so many people?
To a lot of people, revolution is sacred. So I expect them to have a cynical view of it. I always see people that are skeptical when we discuss these types of issues because to them, that struggle is infinite. That struggle represents something more than just themselves. It represents an imbalance of just humanity in general. For example, if we describe capitalism the way we do now in universities, we normalize some pretty horrific things that happen. But if we put it into simple terms that kids can understand, like, here's a guy who has 1 million logs. He knows that you need to burn a log every day for these families to stay alive. But instead, he refuses to give them any logs. Now, we know because of this, there are people that are going to freeze and die over the winter. But we're going to allow that to happen. Now, normally, the course of action would be for people to rise up, kick the door down of the person that has all the logs, and help themselves to just enough so they can make it through the winter. But we've normalized who's a terrorist and who's a freedom fighter based on what America's hegemonic view of some region is. So listen, for every person that thinks you're telling the truth, especially in this political environment in the United States where people on two sides of the duopoly, which is itself a pathetic spectrum, don't even have a shared history of the United States anymore. What am I going to think when people are either attracted to what I do or they're terrified by it? Because there was a time in which, although I got a lot of credit for being against the Bush administration and calling out war crimes, there was a time in which I used to receive death threats for that.
Jesus.
During the Obama era, where we were heavily critical.
I'm sorry. I have to like his fucking first analogy is so good though. Like I was kind of ridiculing somebody's, tit for tat kind of analogies there, but that was like if somebody was hoarding food or hoarding lumber for to burn in the winter, you would take it from them. You would not let people die, and we let capitalists let people die. Capitalist system lets people die, and we do it every fucking winter. We do it every year with medicine that we can produce for cheap, but we just don't give it to people, even though it costs the companies dollars to make.
Of his war crimes and the administration and what they were doing, we saw a lot of the quote unquote liberal allies that we had abandon us. And people who were elevated from a position of justifying a monstrosity like that were given a platform simply because they were opposed to a carnival barker like Mr. Trump. Mr. Obama made spineless liberals feel like progressives, and Mr. Trump made stupid people feel smart. And this is the world that we live in now, a world on the brink of civil war, a war in the Ukraine and Russia, you know, natural resources being depleted around the planet. There are people who don't even believe Corona was real. And then there are some of us that just despise the government response to it, that says, well, where's the health care, right? You gave us $600 and you told us die in your house. I'm a conspiracy theorist for bringing that up. That's the future of America. When people look at my music, take this from it if you take anything from it. I wasn't talking about the past. I was talking about what's to come. When I said in the cause of death, without the, and now that I think back, Mr. Cheney, you couldn't have the war in Iraq or a budget of world conquest proportions and revoke the right to abortion. We were talking about this in 2003. You can go back and see Revolutionary Volume 2. And it's not because I'm a prophet. It's not because I'm some kind of spiritual guru that stares into a crystal wall. It's because this was the naked truth that was written on the wall, and people didn't want to see it. They don't want to see proximity to their politics be fascism. So they changed the narrative.
Well,
Spencer, this
All right, that was. I was gonna jump ahead to the 23rd minute. I forgot how good the opening was. Yeah, it's a great interview. This is a really good interview. I watched it, like I said, a couple days ago. Hold on, we wanted to know when this was from. 7 days ago. It has now been a week. It is a whole 7 days old. Hey, what's up, Metallic Soul? How's it going? What's up? What's up? Weren't you just streaming? You just get off. I popped in for a second. Not much though. I was at work. You were just on a second ago, though, right? What's up? What's up?
Myself a long time to figure out what I'm fighting against and fighting for. And that's what's so impressive about, Revolutionary Volume 1, that came out right after 9/11. I mean, that was a time that, even though you got accolades later on for fighting the Bush administration or being outspoken as an artist, that was a very marginalizing time. As an artist to come out full-fledged, like, revolutionary politics, hammer and sickle on the front cover, I mean, in a wake of just complete paralysis in the country. And then right after the Iraq War, same thing.
It's interesting you bring that up because what I showed on Revolutionary Volume 1, if you look at the cover, is cops, and on the other side is soldiers killing them. What do you think is going to happen in a civil war? You think the Army, the Marines, the Coast Guard, that they're all going to be on the same side? What do you think happens in civil war? The civil war that half this nation is clamoring for. It's police departments against military, military against government, people forming their own militias against the police force. It's the randomness of killing. And right now, I think what gives people peace in some sick way is that the killing is mitigated. The killing is organized. They believe that barbarity is random killing. Like this bomb, well, if it blows up in Afghanistan or Iraq, then it was supposed to blow up. That's where things like that happen. Mm-hmm. In Syria, if a school gets bombed, but why is this happening here, right? And then the bias of journalists during the war in Ukraine. Well, this stuff's supposed to happen in Syria, but this is Europe where things are civilized. And I want to remind those animals that live in the skins of people, those human teleprompters that are out there passing themselves off as journalists. You know the difference between Ukraine and Iraq? 45 nations attacked Iraq. 45. And you have Russia and what? It's satellite republics that are fighting NATO and the people there. And unfortunately, it's boiled down to such a politics that you can't even say it's wrong, right? I risk being alienated politically by maybe people I know in Russia because I say this war is wrong. Yes, it's wrong. It's disgusting. But at the same time, I can turn around to the United States and say, how dare you tell people that the Russians are ignorant to what's going on in the Ukraine? I'm sure they are, but I'll do you one better. I bet that Americans are just as ignorant, if not more, to the atrocities and murder, rape, and torture that took place in Iraq and Afghanistan. So we have no moral high ground here. You've used up all the political capital from 9/11. Interesting you brought that up. We don't have that anymore, Abby. Mm-hmm. Imagine if we had that, we would have sent troops into Syria, like those idiots on MSNBC wanted us to.
It is very strange, Felipe, looking at the last 20 years and seeing where we have come. First of all, capitalism is like widely loathed by a lot of young people. That's good, right? At the same time, this very disturbing trend where, conspiracism, this distrust in institutions has bred a deep cynicism that has basically manifested into things like climate change isn't real, it's a globalist plot. COVID isn't real, it's a globalist plot. Mm-hmm. And for people like us who
Immigrants were sent by George Soros here.
Immigrants were sent by George Soros here. Shut the fuck up. Oh, that is stupid. When people are like, the immigrants don't even want to come to America. It's a corporate conspiracy by George Soros. That's the stupidest fucking thing. Sometimes you hear shit and I literally just look over. I'm like, what the Again, I'm a bartender. I hear the most, people, okay. When I grew up, I swear, people always said, you don't talk politics or religion at a restaurant or a bar. You just don't do it. Now, everybody comes in talking politics. Everybody comes in regurgitating their politics at me, and I'm not allowed to say anything back. So I come out here and regurgitate it at you. Sorry.
Like that.
Yeah. And Trump's presidency, basically solidified that. It became where he's fighting the deep state. I don't understand how anyone in the movement back during the Iraq War fighting against the state, fighting against the empire, could be sold into what has become this ascendant right-wing reactionary movement that is quite scary, Felipe, because a lot of people that I was actually fighting alongside back 20 years ago have become Trumpers, QAnoners, and it's become scary. And it is becoming what you said. On the precipice of this civil war tension that is ratcheting up day after day.
I'll put it to you this way. People don't recognize or understand what they're really asking for. A civil war means that the United States gives up its position as number one. It means that the world belongs to Russia and China. And while we're discussing those two countries, there's an interesting dichotomy that exists in that foreign policy that a lot of people don't understand from the quasi-right or closeted right-wingers.
Well, I think some people say deep state because they don't actually know where the source is. And then other people say deep state just to keep it a broad spectrum. But yeah, you can just say the monopolies that rule everything. I mean, you can just say the monopolies who have bought everything and own everything and control all of our politicians. That's simple too, but I think for general public, like for people who have been in the alternative media sphere for long enough, they don't need that like kind of placation or whatever, that simplification. But for those who are breaking into the sphere, who are coming into Abby Martin for the first time, I don't know,
as I call them, because they are interesting people, a lot of them. A lot of people don't want to be categorized as right-wing. So they've invented this sort of middle-of-the-road philosophy, or I believe both sides are corrupt. Yes, but you only criticize one side. When you criticize the right, you only criticize it for being soft on the left. So my message to those people is just come out of the closet and be what you are. My politics didn't move to the left. I never became a liberal during this time. I just refused to move to the right along with everyone after the 9/11 effect. And people forget that. I mean, there should be a documentary that's just called the 9/11 effect, when all politics shifted to the right. So people that were middle ground, right? They used to be middle ground. Now they're seen as left. The people who were on the right are now seen as the middle. And the people on the far right are seen as the right. And the people who were too disgusting for the right to even embrace, people who push like racial statistics as closet eugenics, we're still dealing with that garbage too. Those individuals are given a voice that they never had before. And the people who were actually the quasi-left have been moved to a place where they're not even considered the left here in this country. They're considered like, oh, that's so far left that it exists outside the sphere. But the deep state is not a Democratic or Republican entity. The deep state, if you want to have a discussion about this, is not a Democrat left, not a Republican.
He's looking at the camera when he has that, like, if you want to have a discussion about it, because he is obviously far enough left, and Abby Martin is, she, oh, I love Abby. She will scream at Nancy Pelosi calling her a war criminal. So she's far enough left. So I'm pretty sure they're doing this because, I mean, Immoral is probably thinking that he's going to bring on a general audience that's not politically aware. And this is for those who are maybe not politically aware, is my thought. The way this interview is going, it's like they're coming at you with like this, like, in case you're Main Street Media aware or Facebook aware, here's some real heavy information.
Republican right entity, it relies on resources. There's a movie called Network where they discuss communist Russia, and you think these people, and the guy says, you think they argue about Mao and Lenin in these meetings? No. They get out linear charts and they discuss what resources they're going to take from different places, because the USSR is a country, an empire, much like America. So what are we discussing, right? What is the deep state's concern? The deep state's concern is that we're all a bunch of talking monkeys that are trapped on a floating rock in space, and these resources are going to run out, and we need to have them more than anybody else. And the next war is going to be over the Arctic and Antarctica when those resources become more available. And constantly and consistently, this is proven right. Now, whereas it comes to the scare tactics of communism, communism made a reemergence. And I would argue that it's not so much socialism or socialist principles that I discuss in my music, but rather those that are interpreted such so by socialists because they are the original basis of what human beings live like in an indigenous world. For example, sister, we indigenous, Latino, whatever you want to call us, and African people, with all due respect to Karl Marx and Engels, we didn't need a white European man in the 1850s to come to the dark jungles of Latin America and Africa and explain the complex concept of sharing. We knew what that was, and collectivism for thousands of years. That's why we stayed alive. That's how we flourished in a society and a place that was ungovernable to nature for most people when they came here, because they were dropping like flies. And if you're going to discuss being an anti-globalist, how could you possibly support Israel and Zionism? So these sort of total conflicts of ideology are normalized as if they're not there, right? The way the right-wingers or Latino right-wingers will cheer Vladimir Putin, but then at the same time realize, yes, in Europe they support the far right, but in Latin America, half these republics wouldn't exist without the support of Russia and China. So they play you left and right. The United States is getting smacked on both sides. The Russians have learned, okay, we support these far right movements. Marine Le Pen is right there with Mr. Putin, right? But then so is Hugo Chavez, so is Nicolas Maduro. And you're over here dick riding the duopoly still. That's the problem with the American public.
like that one. Dick riding the duopoly. You're over here dick riding the duopoly still. I like that one. Which one are you talking about? We're going quick, aren't we? I mean, there's a lot. Like I said, this is a really good interview. It's a long interview, but it's pretty damn good.
Stuck in that mentality. They don't realize that people outside this country are playing 3D chess, and you're still arguing that Mr. Trump was sent by God. And it's just stupid, and it's nonsensical. And if the imaginary communist takeover is a red scare in the United States from the Democrats, then what is the end result? What is the trajectory of right-wing politics? It's a theocracy. It's the theory of the 7 mountains. And for people who are unaware of that, they should look it up. It's the idea that they're going to reclaim 7 major parts of society: military, economics, entertainment, education, etc., and push them towards a more religious base. Now, it's always framed nicely, right? We want to put God back in schools. We want to get kids to do right. But the danger of combining church and state, I think, goes beyond what the founding fathers had in mind. It's not so much that just the church will influence the state. No, it's the state that now will even more so pollute the word of God for people who have not had it polluted by religious institutions. In other words, it's no longer America's war now, Abby. It's God's war. Well, we're not killing these people because we want to. It's because God told us that this war is necessary. God made this foundation. God is the justification for that. So now you have an easy out clause for every atrocity that you commit. And all you have to whisper is, I'm sorry, right before you die, and you think it all goes away. How fucking convenient is that?
Self-care starts at sunrise.
Pretty fucking convenient. Pretty fucking convenient. You said that on stream 2 to 3 years ago? Yeah, it's a good interview. Like I said. Glad we jumped ahead for you, because this was awesome. This is definitely the better interview of the week. Not an anger interview, or like I did earlier, debates. Debates just piss me off, so.
I mean, that's what we saw with the Supreme Court takeover. It's a judicial coup by a minority extremist sect of religious cultists, essentially. And it is happening across every institution. And at the same time, it's a manufactured war on critical race theory, on communism. It's all fake. It's fantasy, but
Well,
it sticks.
Thank you for bringing that up, because when people mention critical race theory, I think a lot of people don't understand that that's actually a class that you need to pass.
Well,
in
we don't
law
even
school.
we don't even get real history at all. It's like what, and you're fighting against already like history classes that maybe talk about slavery in an honest way. It's like what.
I think though that the other part of that is, one, that the right wing is pushing this. 2, that the manufactured left has done a miserable job at fighting back.
Right.
And their idea was to mitigate these things. So let's take them both for what they were. People will applaud Mr. Trump for never starting new wars, right? But even some of my libertarian friends have fallen into that trap. And I say, well, then he just continued them. What did he do? He dropped the Moab. Yes, for the first 12 months.
He did drop the Moab. Mother of all bombs on Syria, trying to provoke a war with Russia, by the way. Why else would you drop a massive bomb on Syria unprovoked into a fucking, like, into a army fucking, it was trying to provoke Russia into a war. Or showing that we were willing to go there.
Drone strikes went down. But then they went back up to a degree that was even higher than they were when Obama left. We both know that's true. The problem is this. What was the Democratic response? What was the liberal response to 9/11? Well, their liberal response was to follow the 9/11 effect. They said, no, we have to out-military the right wing. So we're not just going to knock over Iraq and Afghanistan. Well, now we're going to knock over Syria. We're going to make sure that the Arab Spring fails to actually produce any real effective long-term change. So whereas the Republicans cheer a man for not starting any new wars without realizing that he still continued these war crimes and sponsored a monstrosity in Yemen, the liberals in this country, in my opinion, did something just as bad. They're like the black cop on the police force that shoots someone because they want to prove to the other white officers that they're willing to kill a motherfucker from their own hood. And in that sense, they abandon human rights, right? Now, the Republicans have a different issue. Whereas the Democrats abandoned human rights in order to prove that they were militant to have the country, the Republicans have decided to make themselves God. And the revolution for them in this country doesn't come when communist Democrats get control. No, it comes when they realize that they no longer need the Republican Party as a shell for what they really want. I think a lot of people don't realize that when they welcome these kind of theocratic, really, really narrow-minded movements, that you're creating like this American Taliban mentality. You don't realize it because you've normalized it as if Christianity was brought to people in peace. No, people were forcibly converted like every other religion with that. So without properly putting that into context, we realize that there are vultures and then there are just more vultures. And the people are caught in between that. It's not just so much a cynicism for government, it's a cynicism against both of these parties. But the way it plays out is different. The cynicism from the right is we don't need these Republicans to be here anymore. They're just stopping us from doing what we really want. And the idiocracy and the cynicism from the fake left is we can still reach out and get the middle ground with these people.
That's all they care about.
We just need to move to be more militant. We need to show them what we want.
Well, and the liberals actually fought Trump from the right several times about trying to advocate normalization of relations with North Korea. I mean, him just saying rhetorically that he was against wars, that he wanted to withdraw from some countries that he didn't actually withdraw from.
Here's a quote from a Democrat. Can't we just bomb Julian Assange? Can't we just drone bomb Julian Assange? That's a quote from a Democrat. They are war hungry, just as war hungry as anybody else.
That was fought from the right. Like you said, I mean, trying to push militaristically that we're bigger than you, we're stronger than you, how dare you try to retreat, right? I mean, at the same time, Trump was not retreating. I mean, he tried to do a coup in Venezuela, increased drone strikes 300%, assassinated General Soleimani. I mean, the list goes on, which pisses me off so much that they use him as a foil. He was an anti-war candidate, including libertarians, which know better than that. They should. I just can't wrap my mind around the evolution of like conspiracism, like how we have a sitting congresswoman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that says actually 9/11 was an inside job. She's batshit crazy. One of these Christian crusaders on the tip of being an anti-gay bigot, fear-mongering about groomers. It has become almost a right-wing perspective where questioning the government, which should be like.
And even then, Metallic, even then, they only give you rhetoric. They don't actually ever give you any anti-war votes or anti-war bills or anti-war actual progression. They only give you rhetoric. A few quotes here and there, a few sound bites, and that's about all we get. A few anti-war sound bites. Never a vote, never a big display.
A left critique of like institutional power, right? But instead it's become folded into the Trump administration, where it's now associated that anyone who critiques things like the deep state, it's become cartoonish, it's a parody.
Right, or anyone who says the government response to COVID was a catastrophe and a joke,
right.
And these people did everything for themselves, for the rich, and nothing for us. So when people call it the Great Reset from the right or from the quasi-right, the QAnon people, I always say, no, it's not. It's the Great Rebate, right? It's not the Great Reset. They already own your soul. They sold off the morals first. Now they think that they can regain the people's favor by offering them trinkets. Mm-hmm. And what's crazy and what's interesting about what you say is that people are listening to elites from the right wing call left wing people elites. Like you're not an heiress, right? Like you're not a billionaire. Like you're not a millionaire, right? The biggest sucker move that these people pull, thinking that some guy who's a con man is really a blue collar hero. How do you have elites from one group of this society that refer to other people as elites as if they're not the ones benefiting from it? And that leads into the issue that I was discussing before, which is people will say, Democrat cities where black and brown people are suffering. I say, you're right, but here's the problem. Who's causing them to suffer? The police department in most of these cases. Is the police department a left-wing entity, or is it by and large in this country a right-wing bubble entity that exists even in the most democratic cities? Those people have like 99 point some odd percent right-wing. Like maybe that's the wrong statistic. They say 76% of statistics are made up on the spot, but a lot of cops every day. Okay, how about this? My brother came back from Iraq and he worked with nothing but NYPD. Out of the 50 cops that I met with him, 48 were far righters and 2 were like, I could see my interracial marriage is good. And you know, I'm just like, oh my fucking God.
I think it's safe to say that.
So I'm saying, yes, in that sense, you're correct, but you're only telling one half of the story. Yes, these are Democratic-led cities, but you can't admit that the cops are racist. Why? Why is that? You know why? Because they have a proximity to your politics.
And looking.
All right, I have to admit, minute 23 to minute 30 is my favorite section here. So we are at my favorite bit. This is the if I had nobody that was interested, this is going to be the only bit we saw. So
Biden, you mentioned the police, and I think that this is really important. The fact that Uvalde just happened. Over 50% of that budget was used for police. How many police forces responded to that mass shooting? How little did they do to save those children? They let them die, right? Was it because they were undocumented? Was it because that they were Latino? I don't know why, but it really is amazing that even on the heels of Black Lives Matter and how many people are aware of what's going on in this country, still the Biden administration gives $30 billion to police, $2 billion to fight climate change. This is where we are at, even with the biggest protest movement in history of this country.
These people don't fucking complain who run shit. They co-opt the movement. That's their job, to co-opt the movement. So they see people against cops. Oh, let's co-opt the black.
That really quick stat that Abby just threw out, they give about the same amount of money to the capital, the same amount of money to the capital city police as they do for the entire budget to fight climate change. Our American, we give more money to DC cops than we do to fight climate change. That's where we're at.
Lives Matter movement. We didn't ask for murals. We asked for legislation. We asked for protection. We asked for people to hold the police departments accountable. We didn't ask for chalk murals on the floor. We didn't need you banging your pots and pans at 7 o'clock. You didn't fucking accomplish anything by doing that.
Zoom is great to interact on a call.
Like I said, of course, this is my favorite little bit, so of course we have to get interrupted, but we're skipping this shit. We're not.
Police, in my mind, don't necessarily stop crime. They go and punish the people so badly, allegedly, that committed this crime, that it's supposed to be a deterrent. And for the existence of this country, it hasn't worked. It just makes people feel good that we hurt the people that hurt us. It doesn't stop them. It doesn't address mental health issues. During the 60s and 70s, there were it was like 500,000 beds that closed in mental hospitals and people ended up on the street. It's obvious why these things happened. The drug war destroyed our community, left it absolutely decimated. Those are things that we don't.
That isn't surprising, but it's also horrifying, Mashki. That is not surprising and also horrifying.
Discuss. Those are things that we don't discuss in context. Those are things that we can't discuss because they're still part of our reality. That's the problem. And when it comes to Uvalde, you couldn't stop me. I'm a citizen. I mean, everyone's a quarterback on Monday, but I can't imagine my children being. There was a woman who jumped the line, who got arrested.
They're harassing her still.
Went in there, and they're still harassing her, even though every single one of those cops is a disgrace to every single person that has ever put on that uniform. They deserve no sympathy. And the fact that people were even trying to make excuses for them. Some of you could walk into a sneaker store and find a boot to lick, and it's disgusting because they've never been really critically challenged by the belief that the police are not there to do anything except to protect the power structure. Prison isn't full of criminals. It's full of poor people who happen to be criminals.
Well, where's all the people in Jeffrey Epstein's black book? We never hear about them.
Where are the people that Ghislaine Maxwell sold the kids to? We didn't hear that either, right? We never heard about, and I went to Haiti in 2010, and we were helping the people after the earthquake, and the independent artist that we work with had a song called Où est les enfants, which means where are the children? And they told me and other people, hey, some children were brought out of the rubble, but we never saw them again. So me and a couple of other people, we tweeted about it, we talked about it. Everyone was like, oh, they're probably lost. Until a year or two later, what happened, Abby? All those news reports came out. Crooked officials from the UN, crooked officials from Haiti, crooked officials from NGOs were paying for children to be sexually trafficked to Eastern Europe, to other parts of the world. This is what gives the cannon fodder for conspiracy theories.
But that is the real
it's
QAnon.
Actually true. But
That's
yes,
the real.
and that's why when those people were going hard at the U.S. government during the Obama era, I was totally willing to join them. Yes, that's 100% true. Yes, we need to fight there. That's why I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not angry at those people. I'm telling them you have a point, but you've chosen a golden calf. And you don't realize that the emperor's not wearing any clothes. And you're afraid to be called stupid or be called a rhino or be called a Democrat or a Marxist. Really? A Marxist? So we set up free enterprise when we go to other countries, right? We set up a free market when we go to some other place, or do we set up a monopoly? What do? Do we set up a competing market for multinational corporations when we enter a country, Abby? Or do we want one country to be the company store that just happens to be from the United States? I'm sorry that no one's coming to help you. But that means that you got to help yourself. And in this case, I told people a long time ago, I'm prepared to hear truth no matter who says it. But I'm not willing to shift along with their agenda. The first one that right-wingers went at is to prove that somehow Nazis were part of the big socialist movement around the world, right? As if they weren't far-right fascists.
They keep talking
that
about
was
that,
the
man.
first nail that they put in there. You know how you split a rock? You put one nail in a giant rock and you just hammer it in there and you keep nailing more nails. That was the first one. That was the first one they lost. And that is hysterical to me, because I'm like, okay, if you actually study Nazi Germany, you'll realize there were like 3-4 corporations who had like a company store and basically ran everything, and they were pocketing all the money. It wasn't a socialist entity. It wasn't communist. They were fighting over their territories in Africa. The sick part that people don't realize is that after World War II, it caused
Well, what's up, Victor? What's up? What's up? We're just checking out this interview. I think we're gonna have to do the whole fucking thing because it's so fucking good and y'all loving it. I'm loving it.
bumped up the liberation of half the quote-unquote third world. And they're not developing countries. They're not underdeveloped. They're overly policed. They're overly controlled. They're consistently bombed. And what we see from that is a total projection of what they're doing. So when we talk about white replacement theory, they do that so they don't have to discuss indigenous replacement practice. It's not a theory, you fucking moron. It's a practice that you people had to get rid of indigenous people. During the Great Depression, you deported 1.5 million American citizens who happened to be from a Mexican background so you could get more poor white people jobs, right?
Well,
Oh, fuck. Sorry. Gotta keep the ads on, to keep the subscriptions on, and all that shit.
That's what I'm talking about. There's no connection or critical thinking about how refugees enter this country, where they're coming from, the systemic causes of these things.
Or what land they're going to live on. When people say
exactly.
they're giving away things for free for people. And I said, have you ever heard of the Homestead Act? Have you ever heard of all the acts that took place in the 1800s where this government gave away land that did not belong to them but belonged to indigenous people, to other people? But that's gone from history. And it's almost unpatriotic to bring up in some circles. So there's a total disconnect. As I said before, we don't even have a shared history in this country. Some people believe that we were playing with dinosaurs like the Flintstones, and that population of people is getting bigger. Other people, like, listen, I get into arguments with people all the time that because I'm sometimes go back to Peru and I'll see Mormons there and they're around and I'm like, let me ask you something. I read your book. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, I read the Book of Mormon. And you believe that America was populated by white people and that one tribe of white people killed the other in like 5,000 like BC. And as to punish them, God painted the group of people that killed them and survived brown, and those were the Native Americans. You believe that? And the guy's like, that is part of the gods. Listen, you're very polite. You're nice people, right? You make nice apple pie. But your politics and your proximity to fascism, murder, and genocide make you less than what you think you are.
I didn't know that shit. For real, I didn't. Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, I do, I don't like having, I try to keep the ads, like, to an absolute minimum, but at the same time, in order for me to get paid a percentage of my subscriptions, I have to keep the ads on. If I turn the ads off, like, most of the subscription goes to fucking Twitch. So, if I keep the ads on, I actually get some of the subscriptions, and I don't like people paying and having it think they're gonna having people think they're paying me and having it go right to Twitch. That's also... So yeah, I keep the ads on the minimum I can to keep my subscriptions going to me. It's a fun game we play with Twitch TV, isn't it? But yeah, and that's the whole Mormon thing. I did not know about that at all. I had no idea that Mormons believed that Indians were just white people painted for picking the wrong tribe or some shit. Like, that's insane. And, like, whitewashing genocide is not okay. Not at all. Nope, not cool. And of course, so I get an ad. I don't pay for fucking YouTube. I do use my subscription money, and I buy a few Patreons and stuff like that to show on my show. But so yeah, all my subscription money goes, all my Twitch money goes right back into my Twitch stream. So if it costs you a couple cents, I apologize.
In Iraq and, the refugee crisis, it has to be said that it's projected up to 50 million displaced people forcibly ejected from their homes as a result of these wars. 6 to 7 million, because when we talk about deaths, we don't just talk about direct killings, but it's the infrastructural collapse, it's the lack of access to resources, it's all of those things that are compounded exponentially. With every death, there's 6 times more that die as a result. And so it's just, the hypocrisy is absolutely mind-boggling, but at the same time, like you said, it seems like reality is becoming severed and detached more and more, where magical thinking has taken root on all sides. I mean, you have the liberals they're the fake oppositional party, but they also think that Russia controls this country. Felipe, they think that Russia installed Trump. They think that our media is free. They believe in these things. On the other hand, you have people thinking that QAnon is their savior, that Trump is fighting the deep state. It's really hard to wade through and actually find like common ground with people. I guess I'm just a little surprised because I feel like we're going backward at a really rapid pace here.
I'll share a personal story. I knew someone close to me that went full QAnon.
Yeah.
And they really thought that like Mr. Trump was gonna come back. And it was sad. It was like watching someone who's waiting for their dad who's never gonna show up. I've had friends of mine who've been abandoned by their father, and I know that look in their eye. I know the look in their eye of a kid who's like, I know my dad's coming home. I know he's coming home. And that's the same stupid look I saw in my friend's eye. And I said, I can't rock with you no more. You're fucking crazy, dude. What's wrong with you? You really think he's not coming back? They're not doing this. They're using you to fundraise, right? The things you hate about them or about liberals are now the same things that you practice about conservatives. Blind faith loyalty to this. And what I see on the internet is a lot of block profiles, a lot of intellectual cowards who just shame people for their opinions. You don't really want to fight. You want to snipe me to try to get me to stop. You want to get me to stop talking about these things. Every time I bring up the kids in cages, you bring up, yes, Mr. Obama did. Thank you for telling me that the sky is blue, water is red. But he's not in power anymore.
Right.
We're talking about Mr. Trump now. But now that Mr. Biden's in, we want to talk about the kids in cages again. Oh, well, what about Mr. Trump? Well, he's not in power anymore.
Yep.
Are you the same motherfucker that said that to me before? Well, I can't rock with you.
When Trump was in power, it was all about
Fucking clown.
Obama's drone strikes, not Trump's increase of them. It's just.
But that's the hustle because the deep state is not left or right. That's what the.
Yeah, he called it the golden calf. I call it heroism. Don't make any of these fucking politicians your hero. I don't think anybody that's watching this long is probably not that kind of person, but you cannot make your politicians heroes. Like, if you heroize them, like they are gonna sell out. Like, I liked Bernie at first in 2015, and then he, sold us out to the Democrats, and I thought maybe I just don't make them your golden calf. Like, don't put your everything into a person. Keep your ideals. Keep your morals. And don't throw it all on one person's back. That's nuts. So many people do that. It's crazy. It's crazy to be like, I'm just going to listen to this person now. I give up my own thought, my own aspirations, and my own intelligence, and I will just say whatever the fuck that person says. It's insane. Like,
these fucking morons
Yeah.
have forgotten, or not all of them, because let me be fair. There's a lot of people who have not sold out and not just moved completely right.
Yep, I did. I went Bernie to Jill. I voted Bernie in the primaries, Jill for president, and then I did Tulsi in the primaries in 2020, and ended up voting Green Party. I always vote. Yeah, I mean, I've never voted for a Democrat, and I say that I think maybe if you look it up, I think I did vote for Biden or Obama in 2012. I think that's the only time I voted for Democrat in my life, was 2012. I voted for Nader in 2020, and that was my first election.
Because it's easy. You can automatically get a fan base. You don't have to ask hard questions. You don't have to really do research. You don't have to rehearse. You just show up and scream the left. As a matter of fact, if I took the phrase the left away from these people, half of them would lose half their vocabulary. You'd have to edit half the show. But that's the level that it's gotten to. And I think it's literally because of twofold. Like you said, right wing pushing this, and then during the election, Mr. Trump, as we both know, attacked Mrs. Clinton with left wing talking points. Right? Your proximity to these fascist regimes, your proximity to Saudi Arabia, you're getting money from them. Well, what did he do, right?
Yeah.
Then, oh man, you don't care about other people. You want endless war. But this is the point I'm trying to make. People didn't see that, so they expected, oh, here's a balanced guy. No, here's a guy.
He's a con artist.
He's a con artist who's being advised by a bunch of white supremacists who aren't stupid, who are smart people, right? Let's not pretend that just because dude wears 6 shirts and looks like a disheveled like grimace that he's not smart. These people, that's where the fake left makes their mistake. Don't underestimate these people's intelligence.
And Bannon's strategy of co-opting left ideas, disaffected Bernie people, folding them into reactionary politics, it's actually working in droves. It really is. And you have COVID and climate change, which are 2 huge issues that reveal the institutional failure of the state and of capitalism, folded in now to No, it's actually the Great Reset. No, it's actually a distraction.
I think, though, one of the other things that we have to contend with is that there are a lot of things that we don't know about, that you and I are not privy to, that are probably even more disturbing than the things we haven't seen. And from that perspective, I can understand why those people think what they do. Because this country showed me images of dead Ukrainians during the beginning of the war. They showed me a tank running over an old man. They showed me an old woman getting shot the fuck up. They showed me children blown up all over the street, Abby. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't take that easily.
Right.
I was disgusted by that. But I'm also the person that before WikiLeaks went out and said, no, I want to see these pictures. And other journalists were like, okay, you really want to see this shit? I said, yes, I want to see what the fuck are we doing in Iraq? Show it to me. And when they showed it to me, I fucking threw up. I was like, why aren't we seeing this? I understand why they're like that. I'm not, on one end, yes, I'm angry that people
We've been lied to our whole lives.
had to sell out and go to QAnon and believe some freak fuck shit that's not true. But the sick part is that the level to which these people have gone to hide their crimes is part of the reason that we're here. And then there's the online rage farming, right? You're not posting to actually make a point. You're posting because you want to rile people up. And rage farming is real because you're not actually...
Rage farming. That's an interesting way of saying it. I think here in the Twitch sphere we call it trolling, huh? Rage farming. I mean, people literally come onto political streams just to say the opposite shit. And I watch the names. Like, I go on a lot of political streams. I watch the names. You see the same fucking names always instigating shit. And I don't know why. Like, I don't if they get a rise out of it or what. They get their kicks out of that, but it is definitely a culture.
Providing solutions to stuff. You're not talking about it in any sort of context that's anything except trying to cause issues between a community, right? You're not coming to any real clear conclusion about it.
Man, the bait bro panels, like, you mean the panels where people just scream at each other and like everybody talks over each other and they do personal attacks and nobody actually gets any points across and no valid discussion actually happens. You mean those kind of shit?
And you're not regulating the response.
Well, there's several things going on. First of all, it's the survivability of even alternative media, where you have to feed the algorithm, you have to be sensational, you have to give people what they want. It's very hard to actually do real journalism. Look at the censorship that's taken place, technocrats who are curating our reality, working with these insidious players that work in these shady think tanks, that work for defense contractors. And it's all for our own good, right? The mass censorship we saw taking place, RT being removed from all these platforms, memory hold from our collective consciousness. Like you said, the forbidden viewpoints, right? That liberals tell us need to be sanitized from our reality. Those people don't go away. They just get relegated to another darker place and feel like they're part of the true reality.
Right, and they feel like they're oppressed.
Right.
You're not oppressed. You don't know a fucking day about oppression, okay? The other problem that I have is when people talk about the lockdowns.
All right, this shit is fucking awesome. We absolutely have to go past minute 42 here. Here, let's just 1 second. What's up, everybody? Just give me a second here. All right. Let's get back in it.
Being like jail. You know how many people have to smack in the face, like literally be like, yo, what did you say? Like, oh, yeah, it's like being in jail. There's nothing like being in jail, dude, okay? There's nothing like that, all right? There's nothing. Is someone stripping you every time you have a search in here? Huh? You got TV, you got the refrigerator, you could call a girl over, get a COVID test, pop off for a week, right? Do your thing. You know how many COVID families there are? COVID babies that are running around the world now? Of course, don't call it that. That's also the problem, the genuine disconnect with how the average people are living. You know, when I went to and you said it best, we have every right to criticize the government's abysmal response to COVID. Yeah,
Yes, getting locked down for COVID is not like being in fucking prison. And if you don't know that, you've never met anybody that's been in prison. And it's disgusting to think that like upper middle class people who again, bartender here, I hear freedom, freedom, freedom. Anybody who feels like their personal freedoms were taken away because they couldn't go to a bar and drink is fucking detached from what freedom actually means.
It's not a conspiracy theory. That's true. They fucked us over. They gave us nothing. They let us die in the streets. And for the people that think, oh, well, not everybody was dying. Okay, let's take the reversal of that. They use that to justify a fucking 50% inflation rate on everything. We wouldn't have swallowed that as an American public without COVID. Huh? The cup of coffee that used to cost $1 costs $2 now. We would have never gone for that shit when that came out. Those people that say the Great Reset, no, like I said before, they already own you. They already got you after Iraq and Afghanistan when they made you be complicit to all that. What they got now was their money back. Big corporations that bought out the little guys. I'm 100% with you guys on that. Where all the people, oh, conspiracy. No, I'm 100% with y'all on that. Yes, they did use that particular thing to take over. But what you said is so correct. People should have the audacity to rip their government apart for what has happened to them in terms like that. Because what is the end result, right? What was the end result? Are we healthier? Are we safer? They got exposed, and all they had left was audacity. You'll take what we give you. You'll get what you'll get. The Democrats made every promise to black and brown people that they possibly could. Broke them all.
Do you love getting high, but...
So we try not to watch the entire thing of an hour-long interview like this. So I'm going to throw that in one more time for you, and we will move on. It is a great interview, but spending an hour on one interview doesn't really seem right. And yeah, if you need to check the rest of it out, which you should, there's 20 more minutes. Go ahead and save the link. Go ahead and follow Abby Martin. She's awesome. Does a lot of great actual investigative journalists. She is 100% independent, so she is not connected to any mainstream media. Anything that she does is all her. What's up? What's up? Thanks for the follow. Welcome in, welcome in. We're doing interviews today. How's it going? Going over the interviews from the week. I don't know. Just about to change interviews. Wasn't sure what to jump to next. We skipped ahead because that was definitely the best one of the week. Like, that was definitely the highlight of the week. And so we got to it. Link is there if you want to check it out for what you missed or whatnot. But yeah, that was Abby Martin interviewing, and I think we had a pretty good time there. Immortal Technique was awesome. Yeah, please check that out if you haven't. Follow Abby Martin, subscribe, do whatever. Oh, yeah, and I'm guessing you just try to drop a link right away. You gotta follow for a little bit longer. No worries, no worries. I get a lot of people who come on. It's cool. Let's see here. Yeah, that was awesome. That was definitely a perfect. Abby Martin did a great interview, and I'm feeling the old school interview. I think we need to jump to that. But yeah, that was definitely a good back and forth. I'm feeling like we need that was a really good interview. So let's get another really good interview. This is Frank Snepp, a CIA officer, talking about planting stories in the news to misinform Americans. This is literally them talking about manufacturing consent and, red flags and stuff like that. Mike Ma is a YouTube channel. I will look it up. I usually got a running list here of stuff I check out on Tuesday nights. I got Mr. Beast. I was supposed to check out this Tuesday. Mike Ma. I'll add it in. Yeah, usually Sunday nights are interviews, Monday nights protests, rallies and strikes, and then Tuesday night I'll check out anything anybody sent me and try to make up, check out new channels, shit like that. This is my old school clip. I like to do a lot of old school clips. Let's learn from the past. And this is a CIA officer, so it's pretty fucking cool. If you haven't seen it, it is definitely worth the watch. So let's do
The
this.
impression that the CIA operates completely undercover, that they're all spooks, as they say, or they used to say out in the Pacific. Do you have a high profile, or do people know what you do for a living?
Surely. In Saigon, I had various covers. I was a State Department officer. I was a military officer at one time. But everybody I dealt with, agents, journalists, knew that I worked for the CIA. It is the agent who works under very deep cover, under unofficial cover, as a businessman, as a journalist. Now, he's the one who is not identifiable, and whom nobody else would identify with the agency.
What years were you there?
I got there in 1969, just as Vietnamization was getting underway, and I left with the last CIA contingent on the roof of the American Embassy when the North Vietnamese were moving on the city in 1975. I was there through the latter stages of the war.
Did you go out on that helicopter in the famous pictures we saw?
Well, the CIA helicopter was the one that forms that famous photograph, but I wasn't on that one.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not...
Absolutely free Palestine. The reason I put Palestine question mark is because to me it looks like Mike Ma, the very first thing it says on their channel is I had another channel, but I was locked out of it by Benjamin Netanyahu. So I was wondering if they were a Palestinian or they were somebody who did a lot of pro-Palestinian news. Because Abby Martin does a lot of pro-Palestinian news. She actually has been banned for life from Israel because of her news coverage of Palestine, which is pretty fucking cool. But yeah, if he's Palestinian or pro-Palestine, I will be checking out that channel very soon. I definitely promise you that. Thank you for the mention. Thank you for the new person. I will definitely be checking that out.
Not necessarily a lie, but maybe a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. And I would say our percentage planning that kind of data was 70 to 80%.
Can you recall the names?
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. The CIA was absolutely involved in drug trades. There's literally proof that they were linked to like 3 of the 5 drug cartels in Colombia. Like there's you know, declassified redacted documents that have been shown now that yeah, they had connections to like 3 of the 5 drug cartels in Colombia in the 80s. And yeah, so yeah, absolutely.
Have any of the correspondence you used in that manner?
Used is a loaded term. The correspondents we targeted were those who had terrific influence. The most respected journalists in Saigon, like Robert Chaplin of the New Yorker magazine Kai's Beach.
Targeted. Used is a rough term. Targeted.
The Los Angeles Times from time to time, and also he worked for the Chicago Daily News. Bud Merrick of U.S. News and World Report, Malcolm Brown of the New York Times, even Maynard Parker of Newsweek magazine. We would go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which...
And this is another one, if you don't believe him, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. This one is all about the same thing, about, you know, CIA using economic means to absolutely underwrite, destroy, and create coups, create chaos. John Perkins is the name of the book. Absolute must read. Confessions of an Economic Hitman. John Perkins. Love that book. Same philosophies with the interview we're listening to.
And then I would drop in
same kind of feel as this interview
by dolloping out valid information which was true.
The hell I am.
to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information, information which was true. And then I would...
Oh no. Are you guys getting volume? Because my volume stopped. Somebody turned off my headphones. So weird.
Drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plan in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information...
Every once in a while, randomly, my headphones will just disconnect from my speakers. And I guess even though you guys can hear it, I can't hear anything. And it's very awkward for me. I feel like I'm sitting here all alone.
...was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Considering that you knew the amount of disinformation, or most of it, that was being fed to the correspondents, what do you think, or what did you think, of the quality of reporting that came out of Vietnam?
Reporting from correspondents who were operating independently of the agency, who did not rely on agency sources, was very good. I cite in particular Peter Arnett. Remember, after the fall of Saigon, one of my jobs was to query journalists who'd stayed in Vietnam after the collapse, and as they came out, I was to get in touch with them and try to persuade them to report on what they'd seen. This was not a disinformation job, it was an intelligence collection operation. I contacted Peter Arnett at Associated Press headquarters, and I said, Mr. Arnett, I'm Frank Snepp from the American Embassy. Could you tell me what you saw? And there was a silence on the line, and he said, you can read about it in my Associated Press dispatch. He was one of the few journalists who turned me down, however. There were a great many others who were willing to trade their information for information I might have, which was a frequent transaction in Vietnam.
Any other reporters you can remember who refused to have anything to do with the CIA? Can you name them?
All right, now I gotta go to the old school method of clicking it off and on because my headphones keep not working even though they're fully charged and I haven't used them all day. So, yeah, I really do feel alone when I can't hear the video, and it's like, you guys can hear it, but I can't, and I don't know how to respond to anything. It's awkward. It's very awkward. So, I have to do I'm sorry, I know it's a weird click, 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 click when I go off and on the mic, but I gotta do the old school way of actually listening to it. So, if I don't, there'll be an echo.
Well, there were lots of young reporters who didn't want to deal with the agency because they were very suspicious. Many of them had come out of the anti-war movement in the United States and had a natural disinclination to trust any official agency. Offhand, the names escape me because, again, we weren't interested in going after the reporter for Ramparts magazine. We were interested in targeting those reporters who could get their material in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and so forth. And once again, I want to make it perfectly clear that we were not hiring these reporters. They were not operating as our spies or as our dupes. But in a war situation, when there are so few sources of information, a reporter may rely on a CIA contact, and he becomes vulnerable. In Saigon, if I planted a piece of information with a reporter, I would ordinarily then try to create an environment in which he could not check the information. I would go to the British ambassador and brief him on the disinformation I had just given the reporter. So when the reporter wanted to cross-check what I'd told him with, say, the British ambassador, New Zealand ambassador, or what have you, he would get false confirmation, the same message coming back at him. He'd say, aha, I've got proof that Frank Snepp told me the truth, when in fact, what he'd gotten was simply an echo of what I'd given him in the first place, via the British ambassador or other of our friendly diplomatic contacts.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding this information? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect, it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field.
This is ex-CIA telling us that the CIA rarely has morality.